ask you something. How many dreams have died? How many goals have vanished? How many relationships, businesses, and bodies have fallen apart because someone chose emotion over discipline? Let's get real. Emotion is powerful, but it's also volatile. It changes with the weather, the traffic, the opinion of a stranger online. Emotion screams, I don't feel like it today. Discipline whispers, do it anyway. See, if you want an extraordinary life, if you want to be more than average, more than someone who almost made it, you have to stop negotiating with your feelings and start making contracts with your future. Discipline is freedom. That sounds backwards, right? But when you master discipline, you control your time. You control your body. You control your focus. And ultimately, you control your destiny. Think about this. The strongest version of you doesn't live in your comfort zone. It lives in the reps you don't want to do. The early morning when your body says sleep and your purpose says move. The days when everything in you wants to quit and you don't. That's the moment you win. Not when it's easy, not when you're inspired, but when it's hard, boring, painful, and you show up anyway, that's when champions are made. Emotion is temporary. Discipline is eternal. Your emotions will betray your vision, but discipline will guard it, fuel it, and drive it forward. So here's the truth. You don't need to feel like doing it. You need to decide that it's non-negotiable. Discipline is not about being rigid. It's about being committed. It's about training yourself to show up whether it's convenient or not. Listen, there are two voices inside you. One is your inner victim, the one who makes excuses, blames the past, and waits for motivation. The other is your inner warrior, the one who says, no matter how I feel, I rise. You get to decide which one runs your life. So today, right now, make a declaration that your future is worth more than your mood, that your goals are worth more than your fears, that your standard is higher than your feelings, because emotion might get you started, but only discipline will finish the race. Discipline over emotion, every time. Let's go. Emotion is a powerful force. It can ignite action, spark creativity, and drive human connection, but it is also fleeting. It's unpredictable, it's inconsistent. Emotion can be sky high in the morning and in the gutter by nightfall. It can make you feel invincible one moment and completely broken the next. That's the nature of emotion. It moves like the wind, shifting with the tides of life, reacting to environment, circumstance, and perception. If you build your life, your discipline, your legacy on emotion, it will collapse under pressure. Because emotion, for all its fire, doesn't last. It can't carry you through the long nights, the early mornings, the grind that greatness demands. Discipline, on the other hand, is eternal. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't care what your excuses are. It doesn't change with your mood. Discipline is structure. It's a decision repeated. It's doing what needs to be done regardless of how much you want to do it in the moment. Where emotion fades, discipline remains. Where emotion cries for comfort, discipline chooses progress. Where emotion waits for inspiration, discipline creates momentum through action. Emotion is reactive, discipline is proactive. Emotion looks for signs, discipline looks for reasons. Most people live by emotion and wonder why they never get what they want. They wait to feel ready, wait for motivation, wait for some perfect moment that never comes. They let their mood determine their movement. And every time they give in to the excuse, every time they listen to that voice that says, not today, they feed a habit of weakness. That's the cost of an emotion-led life. It's unstable, unreliable, and always negotiable. But when you choose discipline over emotion, you separate yourself from the crowd. You break the cycle of mediocrity. You become someone who doesn't need perfect conditions to perform. You become someone who follows through, who shows up, who gets results, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Discipline isn't a feeling, it's a commitment. It's the muscle you build when you do hard things repeatedly until they become your new normal. You don't rise to the level of your emotion, you fall to the level of your discipline. This is why emotion can never be the foundation. It's like building a house on sand. One storm, one bad day, one harsh word from someone you love or a stranger online, and the whole thing comes crashing down. But discipline is concrete. It's steel. It holds strong even when everything around it is shaking. You may not feel like doing the work, but you do it. You may not feel like pushing forward, but you take the next step. You may not feel like showing up, but you arrive. And when you live like that, emotion becomes a tool, not a master. It can still inspire, but it no longer controls. There's a reason elite performers, athletes, creators, leaders, anyone operating at the highest level focus obsessively on discipline. Because they know that emotion may get you started, but only discipline will get you through. Passion fades. Excitement dips. The novelty wears off. And when it does, the only thing that remains is the habit, the structure, the discipline that was forged in the fire of repetition. They understand that the prize doesn't go to the one who feels the best, it goes to the one who executes no matter what. The world rewards discipline. Results respond to consistency. Success doesn't ask how you feel, it asks what you're willing to do. It's not interested in your emotional state. It's interested in your standard. And your standard is not determined by what you do once or twice when you're inspired. It's determined by what you do daily, especially when you don't feel like it. Discipline isn't about punishment or rigidity. It's about alignment. It's about aligning your actions with your values, your behavior with your vision. It's about saying, I know where I'm going, and I'm willing to do what it takes to get there, even when the feeling is gone, even when no one is watching. So when you think saying things that it's about the feeling rather than the circumstances, than what you are in the moment. It's about saying things that aren't tempered by feeling, even when the feeling is gone, even when no one is watching. When you choose discipline over emotion, you stop waiting to feel right and start acting right. You stop chasing temporary highs and start building lasting wins. Discipline isn't glamorous, it's not always exciting, but it is dependable. And in a world that changes by the second, dependability is power. Emotion can't be counted on, but discipline can. Emotion may tell you what you want now, but discipline reminds you what you want most. Emotion fluctuates, discipline is forever. Don't negotiate with your feelings, honor your commitments. This is the line that separates the amateur from the professional, the dreamer from the doer, the hopeful from the powerful. Most people live their lives like emotional accountants, constantly running cost-benefit calculations based on how they feel in the moment. Do I feel like going to the gym today? Am I in the mood to make those sales calls? Is this the right time to work on my goals? Every single question like that is a negotiation with comfort. And comfort is the enemy of growth. If you keep bargaining with your feelings, you will keep buying excuses and selling your future for cheap. When you made that commitment to change your body, build your business, fix your relationship, improve your finances, you made it from a place of clarity. You knew what you wanted. You were tapped into vision. You weren't thinking about how tired you might be in a week, how discouraged you might feel after a setback, or how lonely it might get when you outgrow your current circle. You made a promise to yourself. And the moment you begin to entertain emotional debates about whether or not you'll follow through on that promise, you've already started compromising the outcome. Your feelings are not facts. They're not stable. They're not reliable. They shift with your environment, your diet, your sleep, the weather, the opinions of others, your phone notifications. You cannot let them determine your behavior. If your goals are big, if your purpose is strong, if your vision truly matters to you, then your behavior must rise above the volatility of your emotional state. That means showing up when you're tired. That means doing the work when you're uninspired. That means saying yes to the process even when your mind is screaming for distraction, comfort, or escape. Honor your commitments. That means letting the decision you made yesterday dictate your actions today. That means letting your values, not your vibes, drive your calendar. It's about integrity, not just with other people, but with yourself. Because every time you break your own word, every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, or just this once won't hurt, you chip away at your self-trust. And without self-trust, there's no real power, no confidence, no inner strength. The people who succeed at the highest levels are not the ones who feel the best every day. They're the ones who keep their word to themselves when no one else is watching. This mindset is rare because it's hard. It's not popular. Society glorifies ease. It sells you motivation like candy and hides the bitter truth. Consistency beats intensity. Discipline beats hype. And commitment, when honored without emotion, builds results that last. There is nothing glamorous about doing the work day in and day out, especially when your emotions are dragging you the other way. But that's where real transformation happens, not in the peaks of excitement, but in the valleys of discipline. Every time you resist the urge to negotiate with your feelings, you reinforce a powerful identity, the identity of someone who finishes what they start, someone who follows through, someone who leads themselves. That's leadership in its purest form, not leading others, but mastering your own impulses, your own distractions, your own self-doubt. It's choosing responsibility over reaction. It's saying, I don't care how I feel, I care about who I'm becoming. There will always be a reason to skip the work. There will always be an emotion ready to justify inaction. Your brain is brilliant at protecting you from discomfort. It will find excuses, rationalizations, logic that sounds reasonable but leads you nowhere. You have to become smarter than your excuses. You have to develop an internal standard that says, I do what I said I would do, period. That's not being robotic, that's being intentional. That's what separates those who achieve real momentum from those who stay stuck, waiting for a better mood to arrive. Honor your commitments like they're sacred, because they are. Your goals are not casual wishes. Your dreams are not optional hobbies. If they matter to you, if they truly matter, you need to act like it. And that means showing up on the days you don't want to. That means sacrificing temporary comfort for long-term greatness. That means becoming the kind of person who can be counted on, not just by others, but by yourself. When you become that person, you no longer need to feel motivated. You no longer wait for inspiration. You act because it's who you are. You don't need to feel like it because you've trained yourself to follow through regardless. You've removed choice from the equation and replaced it with identity. You no longer ask, should I do this? You simply say, this is what I do. Your future depends on what you do when you don't feel like it. That's the truth most people avoid. It's easy to take action when you're motivated. It's easy to commit when you're excited. It's easy to show up when everything is going your way. But what happens when the fire burns out? What happens when the excitement fades, the inspiration dries up, and the resistance kicks in? That's where the real battle is fought. So that's where your future's decided. Not in the highlight moments, but in the quiet ones. In the mornings when your alarm goes off and every part of you wants to stay in bed. in the late nights when the world is asleep and you're still grinding. In the moments no one sees, no one claps for, no one praises. Those are the decisions that shape who you become. The truth is, every excuse you make today becomes a debt you owe tomorrow. And every time you choose to push through, even when it's hard, you're making a deposit in the bank of your future. You're building something that lasts. The discipline you build today is the foundation your success will stand on. But that foundation isn't poured when things are easy. It's poured when you push through pain, when you reject distraction, when you act in spite of how you feel. There is a very real separation between people who live reactively and people who live deliberately. The reactive person does what's convenient. They allow their energy, their schedule, their focus to be dictated by how they feel in the moment. They wait for the right time, the right mood, the right mindset. But the deliberate person decides once and follows through always. They show up whether or not they feel like it. They know that progress isn't made in comfort, progress is made in resistance. When your body says stop and you say go. When your mind says give up and you say not today. When you feel weak but you act strong anyway. That is the space where champions are forged. That is the space where legacies are built. You don't rise when you feel good. You rise when you choose purpose over preference. You rise when you say yes to the work even when it's painful, even when it's lonely, even when it doesn't feel rewarding in the moment. Because you understand that the rewards don't come right away. They're earned slowly, patiently, through years of consistency that most people simply don't have the guts to commit to. Every time you take action when you don't feel like it, you train your brain to be stronger than your emotions. You rewire your nervous system to push past resistance. You stop being a slave to temporary discomfort and you start becoming the kind of person who can endure anything. That's a dangerous kind of person. That's someone who can outlast the competition, outwork the doubt, outperform the excuses. That's someone who cannot be stopped because they've already won the war within. Most people never get what they want because they only take action when they feel good. But your future is not created in the feel-good moments. It's created in the hard ones. In the moments of fatigue, boredom, frustration, fear. What you do in those moments writes the story of your life. The question is, are you writing a story of excuses or a story of resilience? Are you giving into your feelings or rising up in spite of them? Rise up. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to move. You just need to show up. You just need to take the next step. One decision at a time. One uncomfortable choice after another. That's how empires are built. Not in massive leaps, but in thousands of small acts of discipline. One more rep. One more call. One more hour, one more sacrifice. And those small choices compound, they stack on top of each other until the results become undeniable. The person who builds their future is not always the most talented, the most gifted, or the most connected. It's the one who shows up anyway, the one who pushes when others pause, the one who understands that the path to greatness isn't walked on days when it's easy. It's carved out of the days when it's hard, and you do it anyway. Discipline is the voice of your inner warrior. It's not loud or flashy. It doesn't scream for attention or demand applause. It doesn't need an audience. The inner warrior moves in silence, fueled by purpose, powered by consistency, guided by conviction. This voice doesn't speak in emotion. It speaks in action. It doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what needs to be done. While the world chases temporary motivation, the warrior relies on inner standards. While others wait for the right time, the warrior creates the time. There is no delay, no debate, there is only commitment. The inner warrior isn't concerned with external validation. It doesn't need permission to be relentless. It doesn't need likes, approval, or comfort. The warrior thrives in discomfort. It sees resistance as opportunity. It sees fatigue as a test. It sees fear not as a wall, but as a door. The average person turns back when they feel overwhelmed, but the warrior steps forward. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. That's what discipline is. It's the unwavering execution of a decision you already made. It's what drives you when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when the reward is still far off. Discipline doesn't show up in the heat of emotion. It shows up in the cold, quiet hours where excuses echo the loudest. The inner warrior trains you to choose the hard thing over the easy thing, not once, but repeatedly. Because power isn't built in a single moment. Power is built over time, through repetition, through resistance, through choosing alignment over indulgence. The warrior doesn't seek comfort, it seeks control. Control over mind, over habits, over impulses. We all have that warrior inside us, but for most people it's buried under years of compromise, distraction, self-doubt, and emotional reaction. But it's there, waiting to be summoned. It's the part of you that's not afraid of the pain, the grind, the silence. The part of you that doesn't need to feel good to do good. It doesn't care about moods. It cares about mission. It's forged in early mornings, late nights, and the countless hours in between where no one is cheering you on. But you keep going anyway. Discipline speaks a different language than emotion. Emotion says, I want to quit. Discipline says, we don't quit. Emotion says, I don't feel like it. Discipline says, do it anyway. Emotion says, it's too hard. Discipline says, hard is where we grow. The warrior within doesn't argue with fear. It acknowledges it and moves forward. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. Discipline is what gives you. We all have that warrior inside us, but for most people, it's buried. Buried under years of compromise, distraction, self-doubt, and emotional reaction. But it's there, waiting to be summoned. It's the part of you that's not afraid of the pain, the grind, the silence. The part of you that doesn't need to feel good to do good. It doesn't care about moods, it cares about mission. It's forged in early mornings, late nights, and the countless hours in between where no one is cheering you on, but you keep going anyway. Discipline speaks a different language than emotion. Emotion says, I want to quit. Discipline says, we don't quit. Emotion says, I don't feel like it. Discipline says, do it anyway. Emotion says, it's too hard. Discipline says, hard is where we grow. The warrior within doesn't argue with fear. It acknowledges it and moves forward. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. Discipline is what gives you that mastery. It's what teaches your body and mind to obey your intention, not your hesitation. The inner warrior doesn't get distracted by setbacks. It expects them. It welcomes them as part of the process. Every failure is fuel. Every rejection is a lesson. Every obstacle is a weight to be lifted. This mindset doesn't break, it builds. Every day you choose discipline, you add armor. Every time you act without needing to feel ready, you sharpen the blade. Every time you reject excuses, you strengthen resolve. It's not about being aggressive, it's about being unshakable. In a world where people are addicted to stimulation and driven by emotion, the one who answers to discipline becomes unstoppable. Because when you're not dependent on feeling good, you can stay consistent. When you don't need external motivation, you can move faster, longer, harder. That's the edge, that's the advantage the warrior holds over the emotional. Not because they're better, but because they're trained. Trained to move with intention, not reaction. Trained to value results over comfort. Trained to lead themselves, especially when it's inconvenient. Your inner warrior doesn't need things to be fair or perfect or easy. It just needs you to listen. It just needs you to shut out the noise, silence the doubt, and move. Move through the resistance, move through the boredom, move through the chaos. The warrior doesn't hesitate, it doesn't stall, It doesn't wait for clarity, it creates it. You may not always hear the warrior loudly, especially when your emotional mind is screaming, but it's there, steady, grounded, unwavering. It's the part of you that remembers who you are and what you came to do. The voice that says, we don't rise for applause, we rise for purpose. That's the voice of discipline. That's the voice of the inner warrior. Motivation starts the race, but discipline finishes it. At the beginning, everything feels exciting. There's energy, there's vision, there's fire. You're ready to move, to change, to become. That surge of motivation is powerful. It can spark transformation, trigger decisions, launch goals. But it can't sustain them because motivation is emotional. It comes and goes like the wind. It can lift you high in the morning and vanish by the afternoon. If you build your foundation on motivation alone, you're building on sand. When the pressure comes, when the resistance shows up, that surface collapses. And that's where most people stop, right after they start. Discipline is different. Discipline is what remains when motivation disappears. It's not emotional, it's structural. It's not loud and thrilling. It's quiet, consistent, and relentless. Discipline doesn't ask you to feel inspired. It asks you to follow through, to do what you said you would do, to act in alignment with your purpose, even when your passion has faded. That's why discipline finishes the race. It doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on what you've committed to. It depends on standards, not feelings. Discipline is the mechanism that bridges the gap between wanting something and achieving it. Anyone can start, anyone can dream. Anyone can say they want change. The world is full of people who take the first step. But what separates those who win is what they do when it gets boring, when it gets repetitive, when it gets hard. Because every goal you set comes with resistance attached. And that resistance doesn't show up on day 1. It shows up on day 30. It shows up when you've lost momentum. When the novelty wears off. When you're no longer getting quick results. And that's where the test begins. That's where discipline takes over. Discipline doesn't need permission. It doesn't ask for comfort. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It shows up when it's raining. It shows up when you're tired. It shows up when your confidence is low. Discipline doesn't operate based on external rewards. It moves because of internal standards. It says, this is who I am, this is what I do, no matter what. While others are looking for reasons to quit, discipline is creating reasons to continue. While others are distracted by short-term gratification, discipline is locked in on long-term fulfillment. Motivation is loud at the start, but it's discipline that has the endurance. Motivation is a spark, but discipline is the engine. You need that engine if you're going to go the distance. You need it when no one is watching, when progress is invisible, when doubt is creeping in. Because the finish line is not handed out at the beginning. It's earned one difficult, often thankless step at a time. And every time you choose discipline over comfort, you close the gap. You separate yourself from the masses. You build identity. You become someone who follows through. It's not that the motivated person doesn't want success. It's that they haven't trained themselves to act without the feeling. But when discipline becomes your identity, you don't have to feel like it, you don't have to want to, you just do it. Because that's what closers do. That's what finishers do. They don't let emotion run the schedule. They let purpose run the process. The discipline-driven person understands that greatness it's not about bursts of effort. It's about consistent application. Reps, 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 even when it's dull, even when it hurts, even when it seems like nothing is working. The people who rise to the top didn't get there on motivation alone. They got there because they turned discipline into a lifestyle. They don't need hype, they have habits. They don't need to feel ready, they stay ready. Their progress compounds while others are starting and stopping, restarting and quitting. Discipline creates momentum, and momentum is the most powerful force in achievement. Once you've got it, you become unstoppable. But it doesn't come from hype. It comes from doing the hard thing over and over until it's no longer hard. It's just who you are. You can't count on how you feel. You can't rely on excitement. You can't wait for inspiration to strike. Because the race is long. The path is uphill. The road is filled with obstacles. Motivation might get you out of bed once, maybe twice. But discipline will get you out of bed every time. It will get you into the gym, into the studio, into the boardroom. It will get you through the setbacks, through the doubts, through the fear. Discipline doesn't care how you feel, it cares what you do. That's why it finishes what motivation starts.